Today I'm asking myself the question, what is depression and what does depression feel like? And it's a fairly basic and fundamental question in any mental health discussion. However, it's an extremely difficult one to answer. Even though, as I've said in many of these videos, I've suffered from it and for many years, but when you're embedded in the whole thing, it's sometimes very difficult to see the wood for the trees and step above it. So that's what I'm going to try and do here today. I'm going to try and step out of it and ask myself what it is. And I've done previous video on what is anxiety and what does that feel like. And now I'm going to, and I think somehow it's easier to answer that question, what anxiety is. It's a very physical feeling, whereas depression is possibly less so. It's probably more in the mind. Now, I suppose the first thing people say is people call it the black dog and, the depression and stuff. And this is a semantical thing, but I think it's important. Semantic. People call it as a noun. Depression and a black dog and a noun, basically. But I think I look on it as a verb, really. It's something that you do. That is an more empowering way of looking at it, I find. And because for me, it's patterns that I do which don't help me, which lead me, which drag me down. And why would I do them? That's the ultimate question. And how do I reprogram myself with different patterns that are more empowering and spiral myself upwards rather than spiraling myself downwards? So I've never really liked that analogy that it's a black dog, as Churchill would have called it, or that it's a thing, because that's a very disempowering idea. And even though it's semantics, I think all of this is in the mind. So however we phrase it and frame it is crucial, I think, because if we go through our lives imagining that it's just this thing that visits us or is inside us and it just pops up now and again and wrecks our day or weeks or months or years, then that's pretty imprisoning and disempowering. Whereas I like to think on it as something that is something that I choose to do. And I think it's very critical in life to take responsibility. I remember hearing once, everything is your responsibility, nothing is your fault. And I think it's a critical thing to improve and for personal development is to take responsibility for absolutely everything in your life. And I believe that. I believe I choose everything that's happened in my life. And all of the difficulties that I'm now confronting and I've chosen them somehow. It mightn't be immediately obvious how I've done that, but and the empowering bit about that is I can choose to change and I can choose to undo that and reprogram myself in different ways. And that's where NLP has come in my life as well, which has led to a lot of improvement. And at the moment I'm feeling actually quite good. So it feels like I'm talking about this from a distance and I don't feel depressed at the moment, which is a nice thing to say. So I'm really talking about something that has happened, and I don't want to be complacent about it, but it's something that I'm talking about in the past. And okay, what is it? And there have been some polemicists who have come out with controversial comments like that depression doesn't exist. And of course, needless to say, that has caused hysterical reaction and a lot of offense taking and stuff like that. And I remember when I heard that comment, even though I was a sufferer, I chose not to be offended by it. I think people are far too quick to jump to be offended by everything nowadays, and I think it doesn't really serve any purpose. And sometimes I think it's useful to have people who challenge and provoke and are polemicists and want to provoke us and change radical thinking. I think that's the only way we improve anything. And those people are being driven out of society, I think it's fair to say. I think if the likes of Einstein and Galileo were alive today, they would be shadow banned on social media, first of all, and then they'd be quietly cancelled. They'd be removed from their chair in the universities and just quietly bought off and retired, because any radical thinking like that, if Einstein was to say, well, space is warped by your pencil, they would just quietly move him into a psychiatric ward, I think. That kind of radical thinking, I don't think there's room for it in today's world, where it's a conformist, totally conformist world. But when people come out with comments like that, I think instead of being offended, maybe we should examine it, and possibly there's a positive route to that, in that, and a less offensive one than the original one that's pounced upon, in that maybe depression is a different form to what we've generally accepted it as up to now. And there is a lot of controversy around, it was the line that was trotted out by psychiatrists in the past was that this is a chemical imbalance in your brain and we need to pump you with chemicals to rebalance you. And that has been discredited largely. There has been no evidence of a chemical imbalance in the brain. They're not able to determine chemical imbalances in the brain. No, it's not possible to see it. Which leaves a total gap in the foundation of what is depression. And really, for me, in the absence of a really, really strong foundation, I have to find the model that works best for me. And for me, it's a series of negative patterns that I'm running, which are dragging me and spiraling me downwards sometimes. And it's possible to spiral back out of them by using more empowering strategies. And it's things that I do, it's actions that I'm responsible for, and it's actions that I'm choosing, which is a fairly weighty load of responsibility, but it's more empowering. It means I can choose to undo it. And some of those things are maybe sleeping too much, negative behaviors like not exercising, eating too much, spiraling negative thoughts, allowing negative thoughts to ruin space in your head. All of those things are programs in the brain which we choose to do, which are causing this condition. Now, so really, the way I see it, it's still an open book, and it's something that I've spent my life investigating. And again, it is just a label. I mean, it's a word and a label. As Shakespeare said, a rose by any other name, it still smells sweet. And so it's something that I think we're going to evolve as time goes by into a more mature model and approach of what the hell this is. And maybe we'll have a more benign model in the future, that it's about different strains of people's personality that are being exhibited in different forms, some of which we might like, but it's part of the fundamental individuality of who we are. There are my thoughts on that. Let me know in the comments if you suffer from this as well and what you think it is. What is it for you? And whatever you're doing, I hope it helps for you. I'll see you next time.